Hello, hey, how you doing? Welcome to episode 57 of the Dodgeball Marketing Podcast, where we talk about all things digital marketing. My name's Chris.
Hey, I'm Michael.
This is Michael. And today we're going to talk about building your online profile for better SEO. Now, when we say online profile, we're not talking about your social media profile. That's what most people think of when you think of profile. We're talking about the way that search engines like Google, we'll just say Google, well, the way Google sees your business.
Yeah,
also
what's your name? Yeah,
and also how people perceive you. Right, so this is your online identity as a whole.
Yep.
And so we're going to name 5 things here that you can do to think about to make sure that profile is consistent and it communicates the right thing to both to your audience and to Google. So the first thing we're going to talk about is avoiding confusion with your domain name. So your domain name from an SEO perspective, Michael, and you can back me up here or contradict me if you want to, but I would say it used to be really important for SEO, but not like you used to be able to go get Milwaukee Locksmith and you show up for Milwaukee
you'd be number one right away. Yeah.
So it's not as important as it used to be, but if you can use it in your URL, it's still helpful. Would you agree with that part of it?
I think for SEO wise, I would say having good keywords in your domain is not a bad thing. But I would say that now that's not so much because of search engines as much as maybe the user.
Right.
Yeah.
It signals to them like what you do as a
I'm
business
on the right
services
track, or this is what I'm looking for.
And one of them, and another thing we could talk about is just avoiding confusion in the name itself. So a good example here would be like, let's say you have a mowing, lawnmower,
a commercial lawnmower manufacturing company,
and let's say it's called Smith Mowers.
Yep.
Or let's say the company is called Smith Manufacturing, but you make mowers. You don't want to use a domain name like Smith Manufacturing or Smith MFG, like an abbreviation. That's confusing for the user,
right?
And people don't know what MFG means. They think it's an acronym for something else. Better to go with something like Smith Mowers, or maybe Smith commercial mowers, or Smith residential mowers, or however you want to do it. And the reason is because it confuses the user, and it's sometimes it's hard to remember. That's another thing to think about when you're naming your URL, is that the more you abbreviate things and truncate things and add dashes, and it becomes really hard for people to like remember your website and go to it. And that's what you want, especially when you're building your brand. Like everybody knows how to get to Apple computers. They go to apple.com, So as much as you can, think about people remembering your domain and going directly to it. And that's really important. And related to that is think about, especially now, think about when you're in the naming stage of your company, early on, think about your domain. You probably want to get a .com, and if the name of your company or a variation of it, or an augmentation of it, like let's say like Smith Mowers or something like that, if all of those are taken and you can't think of a domain that makes sense, you might want to actually think of a different name. So it's that important. Like that real estate is that important. If all of your options are taken up, you might want to continue exploring names for the company to see what's available. So it is that important. And if you think about it early enough, you can give yourself leeway, so you're not stuck with a weird domain that you then have to change, or maybe buy. You have to, somebody else has squatted on the domain, you got to buy it for like $10,000 or something like that. So that's step item number 1 here is avoid confusion with your domain name and get it right the first time.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. Next up, know and monitor your domain authority. Domain authority is a metric from Moz, and it's good to know what it is. It's going to be a number, I guess, from 0 or 1 to 100. And one of the problems with some of these metrics is they don't move a lot. They don't move every day or it's not like looking at your website traffic. It's more of a big picture.
A snail.
Yeah, it's a snail. It's more of a big picture thing. So the way I would use this number is, number 1, know it, see what your domain authority is. But then I would capture it each month in your KPIs. So whatever your KPIs are for your marketing, I would include domain authority as one of your KPIs. And then as you make changes strategically over the years, you can see in the big picture what changes in your ships log of big changes of your online presence influence or don't influence your domain authority. So an example of this would be a company might have a domain authority of 40, and they may start to invest in content marketing and SEO, search engine optimization. And so once they start that, they're not going to see something change immediately. But over 6 months or a year, they may see their domain authority go up 1, 2, 3, 10 points. And they can say, wow, that trend started 3 months after we started doing content on the website. And so, yeah, using domain authority as a very broad, universal measure of where do we fit in the world, how much are we known for subject matter on the internet. It's a really good tool, but it's best used in context of seeing it change over time and knowing the big things that you're changing strategically around it that would impact it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Number 3 here for building your online profile better is make your phone calls and your phone numbers user friendly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So a good example of this would be if you are a local business, you want to have a local phone number. So like, don't put in, I think it's an example here. Like if you moved 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, this happens all the time.
If you moved 5 years ago and you use your cell phone as the company phone,
and it's not the same area code, you've got a problem.
That's a problem. Google looks at those area codes, and it's more highly relevant if you're matched with the area code that you're doing business in. Another example would be if you are a larger business that serves multiple area codes, multiple regions, you probably should have a toll-free number instead of a local area code.
Yeah.
Because Google will see that local area code and more closely associate with you with the region that area code represents. So if you're operating in 3 or 4 different states, go get yourself a 1-800 number and kind of work things that way.
Yeah, or a 888.
Yeah. And then the 800 numbers are hard to come by now, but like also just from a usability standpoint, make the phone number highly visible. So most people float up to the header of the site or on the footer of the site. So it's usually a good idea to have it in both places, so people know if they want to contact you, they know exactly where to go. So that's just a usability thing. And the other thing, this was something, Michael, that you brought up before the podcast, which I think is really interesting. But answer the phone, and the reason why,
answer the phone.
Answer the phone. It's like a really high level
strategy
tip here. Answer the phone. But the reason you should obviously do this anyway, just to be a good answer your phone if you're a business that takes phone calls. But secondly is Google might be able to tell if you don't answer your phone, and how they do that is if someone goes to your website from a Google search and then they hit the phone number, Google knows if they hit the phone number, right? And then if you don't answer, they might go back to the search results page.
That's right. They may hit the back button
and go to look for somebody else that will answer their phone. So Google sees that behavior. They see them leave the website. And I think if you've got analytics installed, like they know what a phone number is and they know what you click.
Yeah, so if you have a TEL tag to make it
link, if they see that action happen, and you go back, and then they see them go to another, that's a signal to Google like, they did the phone call thing, but obviously that didn't work for them because they went to another site.
Yeah.
So I guess we don't know for sure if
we
that's
don't know if they're doing that, but we do know that back button behavior of that result didn't meet their needs, they're back for more.
The back button. So we don't know if they can monitor, but we know that matters. Like if people are ping ponging off your site and going to the next result down, if they do that a lot, then that's a signal to Google like they didn't get what they needed from that site.
Yeah.
So answer your phone.
Yeah, we
for SEO.
And we could do a whole episode, on phone numbers. But I would say the principle here is take the work off of the user. Don't make them have to leave a voicemail if they could talk to a person. Right. If they're willing to talk, that's the moment when they're raising their hand as a customer. Another place that this gets difficult for companies is when they have multiple phone numbers for different markets. And they don't have a good solution like a call center or a central office for receiving phone activity to just one number. Well, guess what? In that situation, there's some cons. You're putting the work on the user, and anytime we do that, mathematically speaking, there's going to be some fall off.
I have a client that's got 4 locations now, and they have 4 numbers in the header.
Yep.
And I'm trying to get them on
It's tough. It's tough.
They need a 1-800. They need another local number that goes to a a short phone tree where they can select which store they want.
Yeah.
So
and so you can like it or you can hate it, but it doesn't change the facts.
Yep.
The facts are when the user has to do more work, they're not all going to do it, even though they could have been a good customer. Next up, know how well you rank for branded searches. And I want to give you a metric that I think is really overlooked. It's really only GoEps that I've ever seen use the metric that I'm going to describe. A branded search is when someone searches for your name in relation to looking for you, as opposed to, let's say, someone might search for the phrase Northeast Dermatology. Well, that's clearly an office or a brand that they're looking for related to a specific company. Mm-hmm. And if they just search for acne dermatologists, that's a non-branded search.
Right.
And so these are two different categories of keywords. They're both good. They're both good because if you're doing any advertising, even on social media, and you're kind of highlighting your brand, you want people going to search engines and searching for your brand. Right. So here's the question. How well do you show up when somebody searches for and some brands are difficult. Some brands are kind of generic sounding, and Google doesn't have as easy of a time serving up them and just them. But other brands are a little bit unique. They have maybe a little funny name, or maybe it's a name that's unique in the industry, like somebody's last name. Maybe it's a little bit of a silly word or a made up word, and somebody's able to spell it right in a search engine. So a couple of things can happen with this. When someone, do a search for your brand name and see how you look. And I want you to look for three things. Number one, are you the number one listing? Do you show up? Do you come up for people in the organic results? Number two, do you have an expanded listing? Are there interior pages that are part of that number one listing? Or is it just a little skinny number one listing that would be easy to miss? Mm-hmm. So that's two things. And number three, and this is where the new KPI idea comes in. How much of page one do you dominate with your brand? We really like when a company has been with us doing SEO for 6 months or a year. It is often the case that we can look and say, when you started with us, you had one search result for your brand name on page one of Google. Mm-hmm. And when you're established up and running with us, we've been doing SEO for a while, you've got multiple listings, mm-hmm. because what those are doing is pushing competition off the page. We might have in those search results an expanded number one listing, but then, Chris, maybe their YouTube page, mm-hmm. their Facebook page, another listing that may be like a local businesses directory, mm-hmm. but it's your business profile on that website, and then maybe a second listing that goes to your site, but it's for an interior page, maybe like your main services page. And so we'll often go from having one branded search result showing up on the page, and in worst case situation being kind of skinny. In some cases with clients, they've started with us and had no presence for their brand on the homepage. And we'll go all the way up to having 7 out of the 10 results on the Google page. Yeah. And the reason that happens is we're building out these profiles that have a lot of robust content and presence, and we're doing SEO, and it's just pushing those competitors off the page. Yeah. So know how well you show up and how much of page one you dominate.
Yeah, awesome. And last thing here, item is keep your keyword research current. So whenever you're doing SEO or something like PPC page search, you're embarking at the beginning of it. You're embarking on keyword research to figure out which keywords do we want to buy, or which keywords do we want to show up for organically.
Yeah, or work for SEO. Yeah.
Yeah, and so. Keeping this current means visiting it, every quarterly or annually, and seeing like what new trends are emerging. You don't want to miss out on any new trends that are happening. So a good example, Michael, that we've worked, a campaign that we've worked together on before is a commercial janitorial company. And what we found was last year we started seeing spikes in disinfection service, because it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. You had offices that were very concerned about stopping the spread and disinfecting surfaces.
Yeah, and needed help. Yeah.
And so we saw a spike in that search trend, right? Mm-hmm. And so what do? We'll we start building pages to show up for that organically. We start buying those keywords on the PPC side, and you would never know that unless you constantly revisited your keyword pool, and then like keeping track of that over time. So like as the coronavirus wave went down, those keywords became less. So it's like it's always good to know, like every industry is always evolving with people searching for things in different ways. And so staying on top of how people are actually doing a fresh look at your keyword research is a really good way to just stay on top and not let trends pass you by.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and those trends, and every business is different, but I think a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that keyword data is either going to change daily or it's going to change never. And neither of those is true. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's going to modulate based on your business. How much your business changes, how often new dominant products or services are entering the market, and just how much of a sense the marketplace has of what they are actually looking for and what they should call it. But yeah, good, cool. You want to wrap us up?
That's it. That's episode 57. Be sure to follow on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. And any of the podcast players out there, be sure to subscribe to us for more digital marketing content. So we'll see you on the next one.
Yep. Thanks.